Sexton trying to get loose. He'll fire. Hey! Knocks it down. Burrow slammed it home. Garland upstairs. Oh! Sexton inside. A thunderous dunk. And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. And connecting with me now, live via Zoom, is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm tired. I had a little weekend jaunt to my alma mater in Athens, Ohio. Shout out to all my fellow Bob Kitties out there. And as you do in Athens, Ohio, I consume beverages and spent time with great friends. So I had a wonderful weekend. I didn't watch the Bulls game live. I caught it on DVR this afternoon, which I think helped. When you already know the result, it's a little less painful. But not as less painful as you'd think. So, I'm doing well. The Cavs are not doing so well.
They're really not. I mean, this is a time that we would really like the Cavs to emulate what's going on with the Boston Celtics, peaking at the right time. Unfortunately, we emulated the Celtics in the completely wrong way with the Wall of Honor ceremony happening in a game that the Cavs lost. Just as every time Boston tries to honor someone, whether it's Paul Pierce or Kevin Garnett, that game is a loss. And the loss to the Chicago Bulls, I mean, that was an incredibly painful loss. I had tweeted out last night, but my frustration in the first half was very Cavs-centric. And it was just very unfortunate that as the game progressed, that blame shifted to the officiating, which was incredibly frustrating, especially in the second half. It felt like every single time the Cavs came close, there was some sort of questionable call. But at the end of the day, and again, I had tweeted this as well, the Cavs have themselves to blame because you leave yourselves vulnerable to a couple calls not going your way or those type of frustrating situations when you just flat out don't execute, when you get away from your game plan. And I felt that the Cavs' struggles on the offensive end of the court, both in the Raptors game and in the Bulls games, were very, very similar.
Yeah. I mean, they can't, when there's a great point of attack defender, which AO and Caruso are, and the entire Toronto Raptors team are.
Yeah.
The Cavs can't.
And Scotty primarily.
Yeah, the Cavs can't spring their guards free at a high enough clip right now, and it's causing a lot of chaos on the offensive end. And again, it's so hard to get grumpy about the officiating when they just keep falling in 20-point holes. Like, I mean, if there was something that was so great about this early season Cavs team is they never fell behind like that. They were always in game start to finish because, like, what's so frustrating is I do feel like as of late we've seen a couple fake comebacks where it's like, okay, like, we're fighting, but they definitely took their foot off the gas a little bit. And I mean, Garland said it, like, we're able to get it back in, we claw, we fight, but then we haven't been able to get into that last gear, which is actually take over and win the game.
I want to push back a little bit on the notion of fake comebacks because, I mean, some of those
I don't think last night's was, but the Bulls certainly lost focus.
The Bulls lost some focus, but they've been struggling as well on the road, right? Like they're in a very similar situation to the Cavs where the reason they are where they are in the standings is because of injuries. Like both Cleveland and Chicago would be higher in the standings, would be higher in the win-loss column if they didn't have such outlier seasons from an injury standpoint. And they are also in the process of reintegrating players, rediscovering their chemistry. And that's something that's difficult whether you're a young team or a veteran team. I think what's happened in the Lakers, Raptors, and Bulls games is the Cavs have put themselves into holes. They've failed to execute for 48 minutes. And then when they make their comebacks attempts like they have throughout the season, this isn't the Sacramento Kings. These are teams that have veterans that can go out there and hit those tough shots when the Cavs turn it on defensively. And that's what LeBron did. That's what Pascal Siakam did. And that's what DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine did for Chicago down the stretch. And I think as frustrating as some of those calls are in the moment, and there was a lot of conversation around that last night, it's still on the team to go out there and execute. And I was happy at least to see after the Bulls game that the players are owning up to it. Darius Garland spoke about how the pressure is getting to them to some extent, that the inexperience is starting to show its head. And if you're looking at why the Cavs have struggled, there's a lot of reasons that you can point to, but the regression due to inexperience and learning how to compete in these games is something that I think they would have to go through with or without the injuries. Like the injuries have just made it that much more difficult to overcome and reduce their margin for error in such a dramatic way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not the injury card. Though Jarrett is such an important piece for this team, I'm just not super interested in playing it because we're at a quarter of the season for this slump, basically. They have lost 12 of their last 18. They've had plenty of roster turnover in that time, but like I think the team wouldn't tell you, well, Jarrett's out. This is the best we can do. So like, because really, like, I'm sorry, like, Rondo is a nice piece, but he's not someone you really need to count. This team's pretty healthy, with the exception of a very important player. So like, I just ultimately think you got to kind of evaluate what's actually happening on the court right now, which is they're just not playing well enough. And that goes to their shooting, which is like, as we've talked about a billion times, the most frustrating thing to evaluate or blame, because it's like, okay, well, I guess they should just make more threes. I'm sure that would be a resounding message in the locker room, because they win that game if they have a decent 3-point shooting night.
Yeah, I mean, to highlight that, on open to wide open threes via NBA.com tracking data. They were 6 of 29 on open to wide open threes, 7 of 31 overall. So only 2 threes that they took all night weren't considered open to wide open. 4 of 14 on wide open ones. Like, that is absolutely brutal. Like, and again, if they were better in a lot of these ways, those calls and frustrating situations don't result in a loss. The fact that they were 9 of 27 from the free throw line, that sucks. Like, you had Karis LeVert and Darius Garland missing free throws at really important times. 16 of 27 at the rim for Chicago. That needed to be better, and that's not even counting the times that guys just weren't ready for passes and just bobbled the ball out of bounds. Like, there were plenty of those instances as well. Like, as much as the injury context is there, they need to flat out be better. And I think that both of these games were games that they could win. And like, it's unfortunate, right? Like, to me, it's a gut punch that this stretch has gone on the way that it has. Like,
for as long as it has.
Yeah, like, it sucks that February we only had Garland play 3 games. Then Garland returns to the lineup, and then you lose Jared Allen before you even get LeVert back. LeVert has a foot injury that keeps him off his feet and losing cardio. And who knows? Maybe next season the Cavs are in a playoff game where Jared Allen gets in first half foul trouble, and Garland has to figure out how to fight against 2 aggressive point of attack defenders without a reliable screen setter. The lessons they learn in this stretch, JB Bickerstaff learning what adjustments to make in this stretch, could have an impact long term. I mean, they're running out of time this season where there's only 8 games left. But at this point, I feel like the focus needs to shift from let's get the 6th seed, let's try to avoid the play-in tournament, to we just need to play better. Like, the focus has to be on that, because whether they're in the play-in tournament, which is now secured, they've locked that up, that they're going to be in the play-in tournament this season. They're going to be in some version of the postseason. Whether it's the play-in tournament or as a 6th seed, if they don't get this back on track, and if they don't kind of rediscover their mojo and loosen up a little bit offensively, it's going to be a short postseason, whether it's a 7-game series or 2 games in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, and like, even beyond that, what you don't want is to kind of end the season with a bad taste in your mouth, not having found it again. That's a long time to go back to just, well, I guess we're just like, I think some doubt starts to creep in, if you don't find it again before the end of the year, where you go like, maybe we were just a fun story, and I think like you want to go back and prove like, no, we're the bad MFers that were blowing teams off the floor the first half of the year, first 3 quarters of the year. Again, this team's 35-21. And like, I think at least I want to see them kind of rediscover that mojo. Because that was such an instrumental part of their season. So to your point, yeah, I mean, I don't really think that they should ever have been worrying about the 6th seed. They should just be worrying about playing good basketball. And they haven't been playing super good basketball. Even when you can point out guys who have individually good games, they have not been, as we've talked about in the past, and my favorite thing, they have not been greater than the sum of their parts the last month.
Especially not lately. And it's interesting. You look at both the Raptors and Bulls games, and they followed very similar scripts. I felt the Cavs came out with actually a pretty good game plan. They scored 15 points pretty quickly on the Raptors in that game. They had a good start against Chicago, where they were really playing downhill basketball. They were getting to the rim. Larry Markkinen was finishing in close. And then they got away from that very quickly. They got away from kind of their rhythm. They fell into a hole. Then they made those second half adjustments. It's just those second half adjustments, it wasn't enough, right? The damage was already done. It took so much to come back and get back into those games that they left themselves vulnerable to really good all-star players in Pascal Siakam, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan hitting tough shots, which those guys are capable of doing. You got to be more consistent, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways.
You mentioned margin for error, and that's what the Cavs are doing, is they're putting themselves in a spot where they cannot afford to have the referee blow a call. they cannot afford to have Pascal Siakam have an outlier night from three because of the other plays they're making around it. And I think that's what's so challenging about this stretch. Because again, like, I just don't think they're earning it on the court. They're not earning their luck.
Carter, do you want to hear something really counterintuitive but painful?
Sure.
So prior to the All-Star break, the Cavs gave up the 14th most wide open three-point shots in the league. Teams shot 37.2% on those shots, 16.8 wide open threes per game. After the All-Star break, the Cavs have gone from 14th in volume given up to 20th. They're only giving up 16.1 wide open threes per game, but opponents are shooting 42.4%, which is the fifth highest percentage in the league. So they're actually giving up fewer wide open threes. It just feels like way more because teams are hitting it at another clip. And so much of basketball, like, it's a game of runs, right? Like, both within a season and within a game itself. If opponents are feeling comfortable, you're not scoring, you're not putting the pressure on them, they're going to feel more comfortable taking those shots. Like, if the Cavs are down 15, that shot's going to have a lot less pressure wide open than it would be if they're right there, or if the Cavs have the lead, or it's a one possession game. And you see, once the Cavs get back into these games and they're playing a little more free, that teams aren't shooting as well against them in those stretches. And it becomes a more competitive basketball game. But they just seem to be getting away from what works best. And Karis LeVert spoke to this too, where he said after the game, basically, hey, in the first half, we started good, and then we went to hunt mismatches, and we got out of our rhythm offensively. In the second half, we adjusted, we spread the floor, and played downhill basketball, and we rediscovered our rhythm. We were playing better at that point, and the Cavs are just playing very stiff, and they need to get back to kind of that free-flowing offense.
Yeah. What's so hard to me is there are nights where the offense looks really good and then the defense isn't there. Like holding Chicago to 98 points, that's enough to win.
I agree.
And I think that, yeah, their point of attack defense does mess you up a little bit. You take the road of least resistance, which is mismatch hunting. And just looking to feed the bigs, who aren't, by the way, that good at scoring in the post right now. But I don't think that's like indicative of their larger concerns here. I mean, giving up 117 and 131 to the Lakers and the Raptors feels like the bigger concern to me. I actually think this Bulls game, more than most, you can chalk up to bad luck offensively, which is the shots didn't go in. Like, if they hit 3 or 4 more threes and they scored, 103 points, not 94, don't we feel a little bit better about what they did? I don't know. Whereas, like, you look at these other games that are just so tight, so competitive, but they can't get a stop when it matters. That feels much more concerning to me as of late. And, that's the stuff that you miss most with Jarrett. But ultimately, like, I wish they had one consistent thing that I could point to. But on the nights where the defense is there, the offense isn't there, and on nights where the offense is there, the defense isn't there. They just have not put together very complete efforts lately.
Yeah, and I mean, the frustrating thing about this is when you play poorly and you're not hitting shots, that means all of the games are closer, even when you're playing against a lesser opponent, like when they played Detroit, right? And when you keep playing more minutes, it's going to get harder to get out of your slump because these guys are all playing 40 minutes a night, and you're going to miss more of your open shots because you're fatigued. And like, it's just the cumulative toll of what's happened this season seems to catch up to them. And everybody's got their own confirmation bias and reasons why they believe that this is happening. There's going to be those that feel like, okay, the early season was a mirage and this is who this team is. Other people will point to Sexton being down. Other people will put it all on Ricky. Some will put it on Garland only playing 3 games in February and the back injury he suffered in January, which they said is going to be something that's going to nag for the rest of the season until he gets the rest of the summer. people are going to point to Jared Allen. People are going to point to Karis LeVert missing time. But really what it is just the cumulative toll of everybody needing to play more and more. And they got to a point where the only way that they can win is 48 minutes of consistent effort and, really competing in execution. And that standard, and like the level that they were playing at post Ricky, where they were still winning games, they were just really, really competing hard. That is tough to maintain. And you would hope that next season and moving forward, that you have more talent where you don't have to give that level of effort for 48 minutes to win games. But at the end of the day, like I think fatigue is really starting to kick in with these guys, and the miscommunication. I think some of that you can attribute to guys being in and out of the lineup. Lauri Markkanen goes from playing primarily at the small forward position to playing power forward. That is a totally different set of responsibilities, and I think he has looked lost more often defensively there than he has at other points in the season. And then Karis LeVert is trying to get himself acclimated while trying to get into game shape while playing
while trying to save a season.
Yeah, while playing incredibly meaningful games against very experienced teams. Like, this is a really tough thing. And while people can pick and choose what they want to attribute it to, or maybe some people will attribute it to coaching, maybe some people will attribute it to flaws of the individual players that they have on this roster, the true answer is it is all of the above. And it all kind of just collectively weighs on what they have going on.
Yeah, I mean, I named this episode "Swimming Upstream," and it does feel like the cumulative effect of trying to cover for the things that have gone slightly awry just seems to be wearing these guys out a little bit. They seem tired. They don't seem sharp. It seems like everything is a bit of an effort, and I'm hoping that it's just a short-term phase, and like they can find some mojo through the rest of the season. I do want to kick it over to the chat real quick. Right Quick 24 asked in the live YouTube chat, do you feel like we should feel good about this season if we only make the play-in? Personally, I think yes, we made a stride, but it's kind of a downer if we can't make the actual playoff.
Yeah, that's basically where I'm at. Like, if you look at it last year, the Cavs had a chance to play their way into the play-in in April, and they lost a lot of those games. And that didn't have an effect on them making the leap this season. That didn't have an effect on Darius Garland. That didn't have an effect on Jared Allen. Like, these are all very motivated guys. So I don't think this impacts the long-term view of how I look at this team. If anything, it kind of gives me some confidence that they're not going to go the way of Atlanta and think that, hey, our shit doesn't stink. We're just, this next season is going to be a coronation. They're probably going to come into next year with a chip on their shoulder. And when you look at the work ethic of the guys that they've put together, it's high. But we have months and months of off season to, celebrate the success that this season was. But in real time, as we look at this, yeah, that would be really disappointing. I mean, it's frustrating as a fan. I hate that we're in this situation. But as I said, long term, this could end up paying dividends for them. Like, the experience that they're going through right now is going to be really important. And I think in particular, I think this is gut check time for both Darius Garland and JB Bickerstaff, because their bread and butter is gone in Jared Allen right now. And they need to learn how to make those adjustments. It's obviously tough. Well, you're not going to revamp your entire offense with limited practices on the go with all these games mattering a ton. That's a lot to ask. But what they identify from this stretch, where they kind of, what portions of the blame each of them shoulder and what solutions they come up with, because this is going to be a collaborative thing. I think that's going to be a really, really important thing, because these are the hard lessons that you have to learn. These are the failures you have to overcome in order to really take that next step and contend. And I think, Carter, you and I have been really, really consistent on this team is probably 4 years away from that. I know people want to just pencil in LeBron James and say, oh yeah, we would contend right away, or Colin Sexton and we'd contend right away. No, the inexperience matters so much. You have to go through these battles. Players never win before they're 26 years old. So I think that this is all really, really important. And as much as it sucks now, these are still things that they had to overcome at one point or another. And it's probably a benefit to go through this at this point of the process.
Just to be clear, they would be contenders if LeBron James joined them tomorrow.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. It's okay to be wrong. Other than the best player of his generation joining the team, I do widely agree. Yeah, I think to answer the question, I think there is a degree of a great experience with just a little bit of a sour aftertaste. If they get to the play-in and get knocked out and don't find their way into a playoff series. As far as I'm concerned, as long as they find their way into a best of 7 playoff series, even if it comes through the play-in, I'm still going to feel pretty satisfied about how the season ended. Obviously not ideal, but I want to see them fight through this. They have 2 games. They'll likely have 2 games to play. And by the way, as much as that second game scares me because it is just 1 game against probably Charlotte or Atlanta, that would scare me, sure, because it's like, okay, either one of those teams can have a really nice night and knock you out. By the way, so can we against a Brooklyn. Like, that is not a guaranteed L, because that's not how 1 game basketball works, in case you just didn't notice a 15 seed make it to the Elite 8 in a single elimination format. So
or Memphis give the Nets the business in Memphis without Ja Morant.
Yeah, so like this stuff is the best team does not always win in a best of 1. So even though Brooklyn is objectively more talented than this Cavs team, if they end up playing the plan, there's no reason they couldn't have an amazing game and win.
Look, sometimes you go 6 for 29 on wide open threes.
Yeah, sometimes. And like, I think really what you want to look at is, that's why I care about them playing good basketball again, because if they just stay at this pace, win 1, lose 2, into the play-in, lose 2 games in the play-in, and then go home, like, yeah, that has to leave a sour taste for the year. And not that it wasn't an awesome year, but there would be a degree of like, well, damn, we thought we were closer than we seem to be, because this team is too good to finish at a 33% win clip through the rest of the year. They're better than this, and or at least have been. And like, I think like that's why I want to see them figure it out, because I think they can and they should.
Carter, you want to know what's actually making me a little bit sad? No, more so than the play right now.
What?
It's that there's 8 games left, and 4 of them are going to be done after this week. I'm not really done watching Cavs basketball yet. And
well, that's up to them, my friend.
I know we're going to get the play-in games, we're going to get the playoffs, but like even if we like go to the playoffs, have a competitive 7-game series, like it's coming close to the end, and I'm really not ready for that.
See, I'm not wistful yet. We're too in the stuff for me to get wistful. I have so much. In my opinion, I know it's 8 games, but it's so much basketball to be played for them. So much for them to prove, and I hope they come in with that attitude of like, hey, let's just play the way we know we can win. You know, let's reestablish our identity, whether we have Jared or not. And I think they can do it. It's just a weird time, man. It's very, very weird, because you just want, the dumb spirally part of your brain goes, well, if they go out like this and they start next season cold, what do we do? Like, do we panic? Do they panic? Like it's really hard to kind of, you just want to see things trending back up, because when you're trending up, everything's just so gravy, And if they can find that mojo again, I think it will be such a good freaking indicator for the level of leadership in that locker room.
Yeah, like that's basically where I'm at, that even if we only won like 3 of the last 8 games, if by the end of it, you're rediscovering your mojo and you're kind of ready for that play-in, I think that's a feather in their cap. And that would be something that you'd want to see. Like, I think that would be really encouraging. I'm not worried about the carryover to next season at all, just because of how competitive this is, like this group of guys is. And I think they're also going to benefit from the fact that you have one of the most competitive players, or I should say, you likely have one of the most competitive players, someone that Kobe Altman has credited for kind of jump starting and being the first one to change the culture, and Colin Sexton. Like, I feel like when you bring in someone that has a chip to prove, and someone that, is that kind of cultural catalyst, I think that elevates everyone else. Like, that's the tide that raises all ships, and I'm not too worried about that. I'm interested to see how they react, because this is an insanely important week for them. Because if you look at the winnable games that are left on the schedule, and I should say all games are winnable. We see weird results at all times, but there's 4 that you probably feel better about than the others, which is playing Orlando twice, Atlanta, and the Knicks. And 3 of those games come this week. Like, it's coming fast, and they're going to have to turn this around in a hurry. And I was encouraged to see some of the post-game comments. I mean, Garland has been good all season about really kind of putting the blame on himself and taking ownership for it. And did you see his quotes after the game, Carter?
I did, but you want to go and share them?
I absolutely will. So Garland said that we've never been in this position before, and it's all new to us. We just have to get through it. We wanted to be here, we asked for it, and we know what we have to do to get wins. We have to get back to that. Start off better. Get downhill, get to the line, get in the bonus, make a couple shots. That would help. Just play our brand of basketball, get out and run in transition like we did in the second half, and just play freely. We're in this playoff spot, and it's super close, and everybody is all tight, but it doesn't have to be like that. And I think he's right. Like, I think they are getting tight. And JB pulled Garland early in the game, earlier than he normally does. And I think some of it was the way that Garland has been starting off passive. Like, he sees that aggressive defense at the point of attack, and he's going out there trying to make the right play, trying to get everyone else involved, giving up the ball, when what's really needed is someone to just put their head down and be assertive. Like, I think in the second half, when they were spreading it out and Garland's making a point of, okay, I'm going to get by my guy, I'm going to get into the paint and hope that generates something. And LeVert had that same mentality. And Lamar Stevens had that same mentality. All of a sudden, everything else opened up. They found a little bit more of a rhythm. All of a sudden, those open threes started to fall a little bit more. They were hitting their shots. And that's the way they need to play, because I think when it gets tight and you understand that every single possession means so much, you kind of get away from the way that you normally play basketball. And sometimes that results in a unanimous MVP throwing the ball behind his back out of bounds in an important moment, or, not taking the same deep threes that he wants to, or being scared to get by Kevin Love and getting away from his game. Like, that happens to the best of them. And I think that that's an important lesson to learn, is have confidence in what got you there. You need to understand that you were named an all-star for a reason. Evan Mobley, you have been the favorite for Rookie of the Year for a reason. Play more confident, play your game, and not try to get out of it. Like, there was one possession against Chicago where Mobley took it the length of the court, dribbled for like 10 seconds, and took a 20-foot 2-point jump shot. Like, that is not his game. That is not what he should be doing. And it was a rare moment where he legitimately looked like a rookie. And I think Mobley has really struggled over this 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even know if it's be assertive as much as someone to loosen them up, man. This squad could use a Channing Frye to just have some fun out there. I think that I said this earlier in the post All-Star stretch at the beginning of this malaise, is like, this is a team I do think, much like those old Warriors, that is fueled by joy, by fun, and the gritty, grind you down kind of mindset isn't really how they like to play. I mean, maybe a little bit defensively, but like, I think ultimately, like, they just need to loosen up. Like, I wonder if, like, that's part of the strategy JB needs to kind of go with, is like, hey guys, this is just basketball. Like, this is the thing that we're really good at, and like, let's watch some clips of some good stuff we did earlier in the year, and the kind of fun we're having. We don't need to hit a big 3 and puff our chest out down all the way down the court. Like, how about some smiles? How about some laughs? Because like, it hasn't been a super smiley stretch, and we said this when we were talking to Kelsey Russo on our most recent pod, where it's like, yeah, it's easy to play with joy when things are going well, but they got to find a way to kind of rediscover that en route to playing a little looser, because Darius is admitting himself they're playing tight.
Yep. Yeah, and like you can tell Garland's fatigued, and I think there's some positives. Like I mentioned that I think Mobley's kind of struggled the last 3 games. Obviously, Garland isn't hitting his shots, but I think like his ability to continue attacking, continuing to get to the line, like working through the stretch, I think there's positives within that. But obviously, like if he's hitting shots at a more normal rate, they win these games. And I don't know how much of it has to do with the fact that he's consistently playing over 40 minutes right now. I don't know how much of a factor the back is, but at this point of the season, like everyone's a little banged up, and finding ways to play through that and to still be effective when you aren't shooting well, I think that's a positive. But obviously you'd want to see him play better.
Darius's last 4 games, I believe he is 5 for 27 from 3.
Yeah, like that's a really good shooter that is in a slump, and tired legs are probably a factor. Maybe being tight because of the importance of this game is a factor. Like these are hurdles that they need to clear. And I mean, if there was any doubt about it before, there shouldn't be now. Like Jarrett Allen was an all-star for a reason, and it's not just the defense and the rim protection and putting everyone else in their lanes. It's not just what he brings to the offensive end of the table, which is someone that the defense really kind of respects when he's rolling to the basket, best screen setter on the team. I think some of it's the joy too. Like that is a guy whose personality is really infectious, and the way that he's always cheering and yelling and smiling and laughing on the court and clapping, like that's a personality that people love to be around. So, I mean, I think we all have an appreciation for Jarrett Allen, but for all the people leading up to the All-Star game that were saying, hey, this is just a kind of glorified role player. No, this guy's an all-star. He's an all-star of a role player, right? Like he does role player things at just such a high level, and he's a personality that they really miss. But JB Bickerstaff did give us some good news there, Carter. He said pregame that Jarrett Allen's pain has decreased enough for him to engage in some on-court activities, which is a huge relief. I mean, obviously, there's no timeline for a reason because it's a bone. You don't know how long a bone is going to take to heal. You can say, hey, bone, heal up in 3 weeks, but there's no guarantee of that. We saw with OG Anunoby returning against the Cavs that this sort of thing can happen very quickly, where OG went from being out to all of a sudden taking part in practice on Wednesday and starting Thursday and playing well, because unlike LeVert when he was out, Jarrett Allen's able to still keep up his conditioning. He's still able to run around because it's a finger rather than a foot issue that requires rest. So even though Allen and Rondo have both been ruled out against the Magic, that's a positive step in the right direction. And I mean, with everybody insisting that he's going to come back before the end of the regular season, there's 2 weeks left in the regular season. So that means he's coming back this week, or he's coming back next week, or he's coming back for the play-in/playoffs.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm of two minds. Like one, like, yeah, I'm excited to hear that. And, you know, you hope against hope that it's going to be sooner than we expect. I think he's missed 10 games. OG missed 15. But you know that doesn't really mean anything because obviously games are spread across days very differently. Yeah. But you know, I do wonder in the macro, they can't just say we got to wait for Jarrett to get back.
No.
What do you think is the number one thing they can do, like to kind of rediscover things? Like what needs to happen to kind of make this engine go again? Because it's just not working very well, especially against these great point of attack defenses. I have some ideas.
I think one thing that I already mentioned that LeVert pointed out, how the last couple games they've kind of leaned on trying to exploit mismatches and, you know, go at certain players. Like that's not really their game. Like there's very few players on the Cavs that can, you know, just find a matchup, hunt that guy down, and score on them. I think it's Karis LeVert can do it in spells. Garland can do it. And Colin Sexton's the other one. I mean, Sexton's the best scorer they have on this roster, and he's someone that can absolutely do that. I think Orlando, I mean, I'm not feeling confident because they're just not playing well against anybody. But that is the definition of a get right game. Like you look at the defense that Orlando's been playing. That's a game where I think the Cavs
Gave
can
up
say,
50 to Sadiq Bey.
let's run our stuff. Let's go out there and just execute what we've practiced. Let's not worry about who the defender is. Let's just completely erase that from our mind and just run our offense as if we were in practice. And I think doing that against a team like Orlando that has the defensive deficiencies that they have, I think you can go out there and kind of rediscover a little bit your mojo, because I think you're right. Like Jared Allen would help a lot, but that doesn't solve everything. Like that's not just, oh yeah, Jared will come back and we're just going to be fine. No, there is still work to be done in terms of, reintegrating LeVert, rediscovering your mojo, like finding the shooting rhythm. Jetty Osman's playing poorly.
I got two big ones, Justin. Two big things I want to see. Every time Karras catches the ball coming off a pin down from the left or right corner, his chance of generating a good look for the team like triples.
It's so much better on the move.
This is not a player that at his best should be starting possessions from scratch. That's what I've learned first and foremost. I think his proclivity to dance and pivot into, mid-rangers goes way up against a fully set defense, but with a head of steam. That's just breaks him into like just that little advantage he needs, and he can use his really crafty finishing, which I've been very impressed by. I'm like, buddy, you can just do this more often. You don't always have to stop and pop. So you've got touch around the rim as a finisher, even if you're not an above the rim guy. So I love seeing that, and I feel like they're starting to run that for him a little bit more often to kind of give him that. I think his playmaking also is getting a little bit better. I thought his fourth quarter as a passer was pretty darn solid as well against Chicago. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if Lamar is in at the 3, he should be the primary screen setter. That was my takeaway watching the Bulls, because he is a big wide body, bigger and taller at least than Okoro, who by the way continues to be money from the corner. So you can just hang out right there, Isaac.
He's almost up to 36% for the season.
Yeah. He's got enough. Lamar has enough off the dribble juice that he can operate in the short roll, and actually kind of likes to dribble the ball in that part of the floor. And it allows Mobley to move back to the dunker spot, where he is very, very comfortable and very, very aggressive in taking advantage of opportunities. So while I am, like, in the macro a little worried about just how much Lamar Stevens I've been seeing lately, like, the results aren't bad at all.
Carter, I'm in.
I know you are. You love him
at all.
You love him.
I'm feeling even better about next season because of how good Lamar is playing. And we remember I had said when Allen went down, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for Isaac to be used in that Bruce Brown type role. That might be Lamar's spot. Like, that might be Lamar's best chance to be successful, because Kevin Love is a good screen setter. The issue is there is zero threat of him rolling to the basket.
Yeah,
Everybody
there's no
knows
dive.
that's going to be a pop every single time, and the defense is playing it accordingly. They're hedging, they're still trapping Garland, and really all it's doing is bringing another defender to him, and he kind of has to lob it over the defense, that point of attack defense, to Love, and Love can sometimes turn that into kind of an escape dribble 3 or something along those lines, but it doesn't have the gravity of actually rolling. And I thought Lamar's screening in that fourth quarter really made a big difference. So I'm incredibly encouraged by Lamar Stevens. Like, if you want to look for bright spots over these recent games, like Lamar, 15 points per game, 60% shooting, 4 or 5 from 3 over his last 4 games. Like, he's been playing really, really well. I think he's cleaned up a little bit of his gambling on defense. He got caught on the DeMar pump fake once. But
hands up. Like, no more cookie jar for you, Lamar. Just put your hands up. Hands up and move
honestly,
your feet.
He would benefit from a little bit of the Isaac defense, right? Like, because Lamar is a bigger body, and I think he's more suited to guard forwards than Isaac is. But Isaac, as I said before, like, he's not an event defender. Like, he's going to be in position, he's going to contest, and just all right, let's see if you make a tough shot. And I think Lamar going for that rather than trying to make the strip or, block the shot, I think that would benefit him a lot. But using him as a screener, I completely agree. Like, I think that is an adjustment that I was thrilled to see JB make. Like, I actually think that the second half adjustments against Toronto and Chicago were very solid. They got them back into those games. They had just dug themselves a hole that they couldn't get out of. Like, they came into the game, both games, starting off well with a good game plan. They got away from it, dug themselves into a hole. Second half adjustments were there. It just wasn't enough to overcome it. So I think starting with that is a positive. I like the starting lineup that they're going with Karis LeVert at the 3. I think that is probably like a vote of confidence, and you hope that he can build off that fourth quarter he had against Chicago. But I'm completely on board with that, Carter. I really do think that is an adjustment that I'd like to see them continue to use, because I thought it was really, really smart by JB.
I agree. I am a strategic genius.
Yes, you are. Carter.
All the problems for the Cavs.
You're pointing out what JB did.
They're all solved right up here. JB just needs to pick up the phone.
Yep. What do you think of Dylan Windler? Because I you know what? Like with Jetty, again, it looked like he got the hook against Chicago. He came out and was not playing the way they need him to. And that's one of the most disappointing things. And I think some of it has to do with how Rondo's been hurt and LeVert was out of the lineup and trying to find his way back. Like, those are guys that you were hoping could help continue get the quality production out of Jetty and Love that you were getting earlier in the year. And it just seems like Jetty's one of those guys that the situation needs to be right for him to contribute. And if things are a little sketchy and you don't kind of have the normal rhythm and you're just like, you're not in a groove, it seems like guys like Lamar Stevens and even Dylan Windler are better at playing in those sorts of environments and provide a much, much higher floor for performance.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like it's tough because, Jetty only got 6 minutes. Like, it's such
they weren't good though.
I know that. I know they weren't, but it's just such a tight hook for him that it's hard to figure out, like, is it a chicken or the egg thing? Because, by the way, it's not like the Cavs are winning. They were plus in Windler's minutes, but it's not like, bench Jetty and everything's all good now. So, like, I'm a little skeptical as to that being, like, much of a cure-all here or much of a cure.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, confidence is kind of shaken.
Again, I like the Dylan Windler minutes fine. I think he moves better defensively than Jetty does. I'm sure you can hear Millie right now. She's probably looking at the time. She's probably in the bath getting her hair shampooed, and she complains like that every time water is poured on her head. But so that's just my guess. Yeah, you look at Windler, like, again, it's just like he's he does enough. He moves his feet better defensively. He's certainly a better rebounder, but the scoring just isn't there at all. And on a night where the team shot 22% from 3, you would like maybe a 3-point attempt from the guy,
or
so
a field goal attempt.
Yeah, maybe something. So, like, I don't know. I'm not too eager to. I'm kind of like with Windler at this point. I'm like, okay, I know you can do this.
Yeah,
but can you show me like a little bit more to prove to me that you're an NBA player? Because there's a lot of wings who can do this.
I think that's a fair point. To me, honestly, it's more, hey, Lamar is going to get those minutes more so than Windler. But it's just tough, right? Like there aren't a lot of easy answers, but this is kind of that time where, hey, you got to dig deep. You got to find ways to go out and win. And like I said, we have an entire offseason to celebrate what this season is. Like, we are ahead of schedule. We have a foundation. We have a great young core, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to be skeptical. Like, there's people that didn't have confidence in what this was to begin with, and you're going to have to win over again. Like, that's just kind of reality. I'm certainly not one of them. Like, I think that a lot of my kind of concerns and swing areas about what this core can be have all kind of come up aces this season. And it's really frustrating. But Like, there's one way to do that, and that's just go out there and play better. And by playing better, you're going to restore confidence both in yourself and with the fans that are kind of on the fence. If you don't want recency bias to kick in and hurt Mobley's chances of winning Rookie of the Year, he's going to need to go out and play better. Like, it is what it is. And none of those accolades, none of the ways that they could finish the season in the playoffs is really going to change my outlook of this team. But this is just one of those times of, okay, we went in a bad funk. How bad is that funk going to be? And can they find a way out of it this season? Like, it's just kind of the time to go out and find out, I guess.
Yeah, go prove it. Go show that you're as good as you thought you were earlier in the year, as we thought you were earlier in the year. Because this is a team that all season has been able to survive and even thrive in the face of serious roster adversity.
Yep.
So, like, yeah, the stakes are higher, but you can do it.
Team.
You can do it.
This would be a lot for a veteran team. Like, and it's unfortunate. As I said, it sucks that we're probably only in this position, or at least to the extent that we are, because of the injuries. But you're here. You got to make the most of every single opportunity. You can't sit there and dwell. Like, I think one of the strengths of our podcast is we don't sit here and wallow. We don't dwell on what could have been or how other things could have shaken out. It's process oriented. What's the next step forward? How can we build upon the situation that we're in and make the most of this opportunity?
I do want to jump on this too. You mentioned veteran teams might struggle with this. By the way, if the Cavs are going to be one of these kind of egalitarian teams, we have often seen this, whether it was the Pistons back in the day that won the championship in 2004, whether it was those really great Hawks teams that were great in the regular season that wilted in the playoffs. Teams that win by committee often struggle when they lose, one piece of one cog. So the reality is
the Warriors this year.
Yeah. So if the Cavs want to be the kind of team, because you're always going to have injuries. So if you're relying on 5 or 6 guys and you need all 6 to be there to be great, then you're probably going to have a really hard time. So like this is they have to figure out how to win, even if Darius misses some time or Jarrett misses some time or Evan misses some time, because the talent level around them should be high enough for them to be able to be competitive on a night-to-night basis, in my opinion, especially as they get older.
Yeah, and let's be honest, like, it was really nice because to start the season, I thought they won with good defense, or great defense, I should say, and a very balanced attack. Then as the injuries kicked in, you won playing a little more heliocentric. You won with a lot of Garland pick and roll and him really stepping up in a major way. And they're just going to have to find another way to win. Like, you wouldn't expect a team this young to find one reliable way to win. Forget the 2 that they've already found. It's time to build on that. And that might not be something that happens this season, but you need to find ways to be versatile, a lot of different ways to win. And that's going to be part of the journey with this team. And it sucks in the moment. It's frustrating. I want to win these games. I want to, I love it when the comeback comes together, and I love it even more when you don't even need to come back. But at the end of the day, like, it's part of the process, and it's something that you just always have to maintain perspective on.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them take on the challenge, and if they can't, then then they're gonna have to kind of reckon with that in the immediate future, and it's gonna be, and that's why I can't be sad or wistful about the end of the year, because we got so much important basketball and so much learning about this team to do still in the next couple weeks. And
beyond that, we're going to have years of this team, man. Like, this is the start of something that I truly believe is going to be special. So, you know what? Like, it's just chapter 1. Let's see where this thing goes, and hopefully our listeners will continue to stick with us as we continue on this journey. But for those that stuck around today on YouTube, thank you so much for your continued support. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so by liking, subscribing, click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, you can send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us. We really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.